Welcome to the Menopause Conversations podcast. My name's Angela Council and I'm your host for this podcast, and this is where you learn all about menopause, what is happening to your body, to your hormones, and life in general. Everything is changing and sometimes it can seem really confusing, but this is where the confusion stops right now. This podcast will share with you everything you need to know about how you can navigate your menopause transition with ease. So sit back and enjoy the show. Bye for now. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Menopause Conversations podcast. My name is Angela Council, your host for this podcast. So this week's episode, I'm actually sharing with you a recording where I was interviewed with Yvonne Shepherd from Women's Fitness Adventures. And I've had Yvonne as a guest on the podcast last month. But Yvonne wanted to talk to me and wanted to interview me as a member of Women's Fitness Adventures, just to share some of my story around issues that I had with pain, with osteoarthritis, hip replacements and things like that. So, it's funny, when I speak to other people about my journey, with the weight that I had, the amount of pain that I was in, the injuries that I had, I don't find my story overly extraordinary. I just, I just got on with it and just kept going, because it's really important for me that I am strong and fit and mobile as I age. That's really important for me. That's something that I really want to be able to do, and that means looking after my health and continuing to move. So when Yvonne asked me to share some of my story, and even during this interview that we're talking about, the word inspiring, when I get told that I'm inspiring, I don't know, sometimes I wonder, well, number one, it makes me feel uncomfortable. But then if my story does inspire others, then I'm welcome. I'm open to sharing it. I don't think what I do is anything special. I think other women have got much more inspiring stories than what I do. But maybe someone is listening to this podcast right now and you listen to this interview, and maybe it might change your view on your mobility as you age, and if it has an impact, and even one woman decides that I'm going to do something different, well, then that's all that I want. So have a listen to this discussion. Now, this was recorded on Facebook, so the audio is a little bit scratchy at times, but I mean, you'll get the drift of it. It's not that bad. You can still hear it. But I invite you to take some time, have a listen to my story when it came to movement, continuing to be able to move, training that I did to do certain hikes and things like that. So, as I said, this is with Yvonne Shepherd from Women's Fitness Adventures. And I'll come back at the end of the podcast and have a bit more of a chat with you and let you know how you can join Women's Fitness Adventures if you want to as well. So see you later. Bye.
Hello, Angela. Welcome to Monday Night Live, and so nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
That's all right. Where are you coming from this afternoon?
Northern Beaches, Sydney, with a big storm and apparently hail coming over at the moment. So
wow. Okay. Every time I talk to you, there seems to be a storm. So I'm not sure if that's me.
Having a lot lately. There's been a lot.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, Angela, your story is amazing. And when we first touched on your story, I went, that's a nice story. And I happened to dig just a little deeper to ask a question. And Angela and I were chatting just before, and we all think that we don't have a story in us, and we all do. Believe me, we all do. And I often say this, that our stories are unknowingly inspiring. And I'm sure by the end of hearing Angela chat about her story today, you will be inspired for movement, and for movement every day, because it is an amazing story. So this story will be available on the website in the coming days. but I'll introduce it and then we'll get into the chat. So despite multiple knee surgeries, a hip replacement and a pandemic, Angela has reclaimed her love of hiking and her life. So life doesn't, as we know, always turn out as we plan, and it takes determination to bring you back on track. And when Angela was faced with debilitating pain and injury, her only choice was a hip replacement. Now, 3 years later, 24 kilograms lighter and multiple hikes completed, Angela has never felt stronger. So Angela, that's a big, multiple knee surgeries, a hip replacement, a pandemic, but you're still there, you're doing what you love. Take us back to the very beginning. How did you end up with multiple knee surgeries?
Well, I was a ballet dancer in my younger years, and ballet isn't real great for the body, particularly the way they used to teach it, particularly with the turnout on the hips and on the knees and everything. And I was always very much into exercise, and I was the person at the front of the room. Remember the days when we used to wear the bright fluorescent G-strings and the skin colour?
Oh, I'm not sure if I wore the G-string, not in public.
Oh yeah, I used to. I was out there.
Okay.
I was doing it.
Okay,
so that
right.
came from being a ballet dancer.
I told everyone they'd be inspired. Get your G-strings out.
No, I wouldn't do it now. Okay. But that's what I used to do. And then as I got older, as I kind of got towards my, late 30s, early 40s, I started to get a little bit of pain. So I also have a condition which is hypermobility. So all of my joints are hypermobile. Which means when I stand, my knees lock back. And a lot of this comes from the years and years of ballet. And when I was younger, my bones developed a strange way because I was doing ballet and putting such pressure on my bones at such a young age. But that to me was normal. And I always had really great turnout. And then when I was in the gym, I used to do lots of pump classes. So I loved doing weights. And, the pump classes, I did all the Les Mills. I was up the front, loaded up the bar as much as possible. But because I'm thinking, oh, this is strong. But what I didn't realize is that I actually had imbalances within my body. And I was actually, yes, I was strong. Some muscles were really, really strong and other muscles were not working at all. So I was basically overworking some muscles and not working other muscles at all. And I just went on with life. I didn't know any different until I started to get older. And then all of a sudden, all of this comes back to bite you as you get older, and particularly as you get closer into menopause and your body starts to change. And also having children as well, because I had children late in life. So everything kind of changed, and then I moved to menopause. So then I started to get aches and pains, and particularly around my hips and my knees. I had 4 knee operations. One was actually the removal of a muscle from one leg. One of my quadricep muscles has been released because my kneecap was on the side of my knee instead of at the front, because that muscle
visibly
yes.
on the side.
Yes,
so
because that.
So was this number 1, 2, 3, or 4 knee operations?
That was about the 3rd, because I'd had a couple which were just cartilage, because I'm apparently prone to breaking down cartilage, and this is part of my hypermobility because it wears. So I think it was about number 3, whereby I'd been doing lots and lots of weights, and this was part of the issue with being a ballet dancer, is because I did everything with a turnout. So my muscles around the outside of my body that turn the hips out were a lot stronger than the muscles on the inside of my legs. So my outer quads, my lat quads were very, very strong, and they were so strong that it actually pulled the kneecap out of joint. Wow. And apparently this is a very common injury that ballet dancers get. Also, netball players get it too. It's very common. And in those days, the solution was basically to release the tendons from the kneecap. So the tendon basically was released from the kneecap, so the kneecap went back into place. But the problem is it's attached to one of my quad muscles. So now my quad muscle was no longer attached to anything. So over time, it just atrophies. Wow. And at the time, the physio said to me, well, you'll never be able to use that leg the same as the other leg, even though I did a bit of rehab on it. You'll never be able to use it. Sorry?
What did you think then at that point? Like, certainly you must have been in a lot of pain, and visually looking at your knee, you would think, oh my goodness,
yes, it
something's
was
seriously wrong. But
unusual.
but when that's sort of an understatement. And please, if anyone's got questions or sitting here with mouth wide open like I am, but did you, to me, if someone says you'll never be able to use that again, I would be devastated. How did you deal with that?
To start with, this is all before I kind of understood more about the body. Before I became a naturopath, all of this. So when a doctor and a physio says to you, you'll never be able to use that, I kind of went, yeah, okay, rightio, I'll never be able to use it. So what I didn't realize, and now I understand how the mind works and all of this, is that I actually buried that in my mind, but I believe that. So what I did is I started doing everything on my other leg. And
can I ask how old you were then? Like,
I was in my late 20s, because the surgeon had said they wouldn't do the operation, normally wouldn't do the operation if you're over 30, because it takes too long to retrain your brain. Right. Because I did have to learn to actually repattern my brain, but I didn't repattern it properly, because there was that I didn't even realize that the physio had said this to me, that I'd never be able to use my leg again properly. It's not something that really triggered, but it obviously sat there, because for years and years and years, for the next 20 years, I used the other leg. And I didn't use the leg that had the operation on. So when I used to go upstairs, I used to walk up one stair at a time using my strong leg, and it was strong. But then as I got older, it wore out, because it was doing so much work that the other side of so that's when I started then having issues with my hip, and I actually got really bad osteoarthritis, and I was down to bone on bone. I'd actually worn it out. But then when I had to try and learn how to use the other leg, and I did a lot of work, I had to do a lot of neuro work to actually just lift the leg. I couldn't lift the leg that had the operation on it.
Because you had just switched off, and because it hadn't been used in a while.
Yeah, because I'd switched off, and I had to basically I had to go back to doing all primitive movements with my trainer, like cross crawl patterning, bear crawls, bear walks on the ground, to learn how to recalibrate my brain to my body.
But all this time in the back of your mind, not in the back of your mind, visually to everyone, you're still moving. You must have been in intense pain and feeling, for want of, sounding awkward, but feeling lopsided and maybe confused about everything. No?
I didn't. Because for many years I just coped, because this is how great the body is, that it can actually just adjust, and that's all it did, it adjusted, until I got to the stage, and pregnancy probably made this kind of come out. So as I said, I had my babies late. I had my first at 40, second at 43. So that actually then that really brought out the twist in the pelvis. I didn't know I had these issues, because I was I was doing the pump work, I was doing everything, I was doing everything I was supposed to, but I didn't know that I was actually unbalanced. And then falling pregnant, and even then I still didn't know, but then afterwards I never really recovered. And then as I kind of came into perimenopause, then we do start to get, things will start to show up, because hormones are shifting. And that's when I started to experience a little bit of pain, and, my knees have always given me issues, so I don't worry about
Sorry, a little bit of pain. Like right now, before you got to that point, I thought you must have been in a lot of pain. So you must have this really high tolerance of pain. Like I can tolerate a lot, but when you just say a little bit of pain, like what you've gone through, come on.
To me, it was just, I don't know, I just kind of live with it. And it got to even when I was in my most severe pain, even then, I was taking herbal anti-inflammatories, but it had to be really, really bad for me to take Panadol. Like really bad. I never took, even when I was in my worst pain, I rarely took anything. I just continued to move through it.
So when you were in your worst pain, did you keep moving? Or did you have this silent cry inside going, there's got to be a better way?
I still did, because I work with a personal trainer, and I was actually working with a personal trainer who actually was an exercise physiologist. So I was doing a lot of rehab work. And what I would do is I would set goals, and they were always walking goals. So my first goal was to do Coast Trek, so 30 kilometres. So I trained for Coast Trek. And then I always trained for something, and that kind of gave me the goal to keep going. And, you know, then I was also doing, you know, Pilates. I was also doing yoga and things like that. But then it got to the stage where when I was bone on bone and I was in a yoga, you know, I'd go to yoga and I was actually, you could hear the bang, 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 crunch, crunch, crunch of my hip, and everybody could hear it in the class. I'm going,
stop right there. Can anybody else who's watching, is anyone going, oh my gosh, Angela, you know, like anyone, or is it just me? Like, oh God. Oh.
no,
okay,
well,
but all this time you had this, you know, I've been saying this a lot lately, your guiding star, your North Star, to keep moving, never to give up moving.
Yeah, because I was putting on weight, because I was limited in what I could, you know, so I'd given up running years ago, because the orthopedic surgeon said, well, you can keep running and I'll keep going on holidays, or you could just give up running and you don't have to keep paying me. So, and honestly, running is not my thing. I just did it because everyone else was doing it. But I used to do fun runs and all that, but honestly, I really don't enjoy running. I don't have the body for it. But so I just kept going, and I was doing acupuncture, I was doing chiropractic, I was doing all these different things just to try and get rid of the pain and get movement back in. And then finally I just went, look, I just can't do this anymore. When we got a set of x-rays where we could actually see that the whole head of the femur, so the whole ball of the joint, was basically flat, and the reason why it didn't move is because it couldn't turn, because it was flat. So I went and saw a surgeon and he said, yes, we'll have to replace that. So he replaced it. And then I'll tell you that I actually came out of the operation, and every time they tried to give me painkillers, I wouldn't take painkillers. I just meditated.
You sound like my husband with his current back injury. He's not having any serious painkillers either.
And the surgeon says you don't need to be a hero. You can take painkillers. I'm going, well, no, I'll just meditate. And I was fine. Honestly, I was fine. And then they got me up on crutches, and then I had to do rehab for about 6 to 8 weeks, and I was off the crutches. Actually, I was back driving within about 3 weeks, because I was in an automatic car, and the leg that was done is the leg that doesn't do anything. So I just drove locally, just basically to the rehab hospital and back.
Glad I wasn't in your suburb.
I wasn't going very far, just around the corner.
Just keep left. Yeah.
Well, you know, I got used to driving with one foot because I'd been in pain for so long that it was just easy. I could just tap from one to the other, and I didn't need to move or anything like that. So I got used to that. I got used to just driving with one foot. It was an auto car. It's not hard. You don't need a clutch.
Did you ever think, you know, when you're told that, you know, you'll never use that leg properly again, or the pain was so unbearable, did you ever think of giving up? Because I come across, you know, in my 15 years of women, that we get to a point and we either save ourselves, we come back from the edge going, I want to keep moving, I want to keep doing this, I want all this freedom that, you know, having movement brings me, or it's all too hard, I'm just going to let myself go. Did you ever get to that point?
Actually, for me, the operation was that. Having the operation at the time was because I had worked for years and years and years to try and correct this. And to me, giving up was saying, I've got to have an operation. That to me was giving up. Even though it was the greatest thing that I ever did, but at the time, that was like, I no longer can do anything about this. I have to go and get that operated on. And I did. And honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. And then within 12 weeks of having the operation, I did the Seven Bridges walk here in Sydney, which is 27 Ks. So
you followed what your physio said as well, and your exercise.
Well, I did 6 weeks of physio, which was rehab. And then once I had to get to a certain milestone. I had to be able to walk at 5 kilometres an hour. I had to be able to do certain tests. Once I'd done that, I was over physio, all rehab was done, and then basically I went, because I was busting to get back into yoga and busting to get back and walking, and I kind of was still doing a little bit of both when the physio didn't know.
Lucky, maybe the physio's watching.
And then yeah, so I had about 5 weeks to train up to be able to do this walk, which, I mean, I use poles anyway when I walk, and I did, as I was doing the walk, the reason why I did 7 bridges is because here in Sydney, I don't know if you guys have bridges, but what we have is basically at the end of every, when you get to every checkpoint, there is actually a bus that you could catch the bus back to the beginning if you needed to. So you didn't have to do the whole 27K. So I did that because I thought, well, okay, at least if it gets too bad, I can catch the bus back to the beginning. And I did it with a couple of other friends. They were walking faster than me, but I just kept going at my pace. And then when I got to the final checkpoint, I was actually going to catch the bus. I went, actually, I've only got 5Ks to go. I'm going to finish this. And I did finish it. And the other 2, they finished in front of me, but they waited for me at the end, and I walked it. And I was struggling by the time I went, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I kept going until I got to the end. And then I took a big deep breath and went, oh my God, what did I just do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what is it though that keeps you going? Like, what's dragging you forward? Because we could give up with all that you've gone through. We could just go, no, that's just too hard. I'm just going to do my walk around the block.
I see. Walk around the block is boring.
Okay, but there's something more. If we dig deeper, there's something more in there.
I just like to set a challenge. See, what happens is when I've got a goal to work towards, I will actually get out and I'll move and I'll walk towards. So a couple of years ago, before all this carry on went on, I was booked in to go to Mont Blanc. And I actually booked in even before I had the operation. So I booked in 18 months or so earlier, and I had the operation. I trained it, and I trained and I trained and I trained and I trained. And I held out until because there was a group of going, and everyone was dropping out. And then finally it got to, I think it was supposed to be going in September, and finally July, basically the world shut down. And then I had no goal left. I had no goal left. And I went, and I go, well, and because like it's cold, it's wet, I just didn't want to do anything. I had nothing. There was no point. I had worked for something for nearly 2 years to get on that mountain, and it got ripped away from me. And then I'm going, well, what's the point? What's the point? And then a couple of, about a month or so later, or 6 weeks later, the group of people that I was going to go to Mont Blanc with, they said, okay, let's do Scenic Rim instead. We'll do Scenic Rim next year. So it was 12 months in advance. And I said, okay, I'll do Scenic Rim. Now, most of them were in Queensland. I was in New South Wales, but I signed up and was spiced with Scenic Rim. So then I had something to work towards again. So now it's like, okay, I've got to train for Scenic Rim. So that was 12 months, and I trained for Scenic Rim. And when it got to Scenic Rim time, like it was 3 weeks before we were supposed to go, and Sydney all of a sudden was about to shut down. Like we'd been under anything. And all of a sudden they're going, no, we're about to shut everything down. And I went, oh my God, they shut the borders. I can't get to Queensland. So it was a Tuesday morning, and they went, basically the announcement was, as of tomorrow, we're shutting down. Or actually, there must have been
shutting the border.
Yeah, we're going to, no, they weren't shutting the border. At that stage, they were just shutting Sydney down. So I had to get out of Sydney. So I just packed my car and I started driving. And I had a friend in Queensland that I was going to go and stay with. And I was actually just going to go to the border because my niece lives at Byron. I thought, okay, well, I'll drive to Byron and I'll stay with her. But then I drove up in one go and get to Byron, and she said, oh, have you heard the news? I went, what? And she said, they're going to shut the border. And I said, what, when? And they said, tonight. So this was 7 o'clock at night, and the border was going to shut at 1 a.m. in the morning. So I had to keep driving, and because my friend lives at Deception Bay. So I was at Byron, and I had to get across the border and drive all the way to Deception Bay. So that's another 2.5 hours driving. I've already been driving for like 10 hours just so I could get across the border. Then once I got to her place, then basically Queensland said, well, if you've come from Sydney, you have to go into 14 days lockdown as if you were in Sydney. So I then had to go into lockdown in Brisbane. So I had somewhere to stay, which was fine. And then all of a sudden, Brisbane goes into lockdown, and Sunshine Coast and everything. So all the people that I was walking with were from the Sunshine Coast. And we're going, oh my God, are we going to be able to do this? Because we're like a week out. And then Sunshine Coast opens and Scenic Rim opens, but I'm in Moreton Bay. I'm staying in Moreton Bay and it hasn't opened. I'm going, oh, is it going to open? Is it going to open? Finally, the day before we were due to leave, and that was also my 14 days out of my lockdown. It was the day before, and I went, okay, I just got my car, I drove down to where we started, the Scenic Rim, just drove down there and just stayed there, did the walk. As soon as I finished the walk, I got in my car and I drove all the way back down to Sydney, and I stayed in lockdown until December. So that was 6 months of lockdown.
So, Angela, why does movement matter so much to you?
Because it keeps you healthy. I've watched my mother, so my mother's had a hip replacement as well, but I've actually watched my mother, as she's got older, get less and less mobile, and she gets crankier and crankier with it as well.
Well, we can all get cranky. Don't disregard that.
And I mean, I've been cranky when I've been in pain, but it's important for me as I age that I stay healthy and I stay mobile. Because I'm a naturopath, and I've seen clients years ago. I can remember seeing a client, and she was so old. Like, in her mind, she was old. She looked old. She was really, really, like, she was really stiff. She wasn't moving, and she had a really bad diet and everything. And when I met her, I thought that she was at least 10 years older than me. And when I looked at her date of birth, she was a month younger than me. And I'm going, I don't want to be like that. And because she was also very old in her thinking. I can't change. It's like everything that I suggested was just too hard. And I didn't want to be like that. Health is, I've realized, and I didn't realize health was such a high priority, but the last 12 months has really taught me how important my health has been. It's like,
well, we don't see it as a priority till we don't have it.
That's right.
And we accept that we're always going to be this way till something happens.
That's right. And then I was, particularly being put in an extended lockdown, I knew that if I didn't look after my health, it's really easy, and anyone knows it's really easy when you're in lockdown to sit there and just eat crap and not do anything and go, poor me, poor me, poor me. And I did a little bit of that for a while. Then I went, hang on, no. And that's okay. I said, okay, I've got to set myself another goal. And then earlier the year, I signed up for Eurogear.
Eurogear. Yeah, that hike, everyone calls it, which is in June.
So because I've signed up for that, now I've got another goal. And it's like when and I still want to do Mont Blanc, and it's still a day that I want to get back over there, but I just keep setting those goals. And when I set the goal, I will work towards it. That's what gets me out on days when it's too hot, too cold, too rainy, too whatever, is I've got a goal and I need to keep moving.
And underlying your goal is that importance of looking after your health. So tell me about, you lost a phenomenal amount of weight. When did that get put on? Well, not put on. It's not like it got put on. When did that happen? How did that happen? How did you end up putting it on, and then how did you end up losing it?
Most of it is to do with menopause. So as anyone who's been through menopause will know, that it's quite, we can tend to put on weight in menopause for various reasons. And the weight just started to creep on. And part of it was because I wasn't as active because of my hips. So I wasn't as active because of my hips. But then as I put the weight on, I became less active because I put more weight onto my hips, which was making me more painful. So it was kind of this cycle kept going round and round and round. And, it would just go up. It was just creeping up and creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And even though I was still exercising, I was still walking, the weight kept going up. And I was trying in the past, when I wanted to lose weight, I would just do a keto diet and it would drop off. And that wasn't working for me anymore. It just wasn't working. So doing the work that I do as a naturopath, I was starting to look and say, well, why is this not working? Why are things changing? And for some women will know, I work with women going through menopause. So I was trying to find a solution for me because I didn't talk about weight for a long time because I was so ashamed and I was so embarrassed about what my body looked like. I just wouldn't talk about it. So women would come to me to talk about menopause. Most of them want to talk about weight and I wouldn't talk about it. So I had to find...
Can we just stop there when you say you were so ashamed and so embarrassed? That's a really big statement, and I don't think you're alone in that statement. And as women, we tend to really put ourselves down and berate ourselves and think that, you know, we have to be this picture of perfectness all the time. So, you know, that's really big for you to come out and say that to everybody watching.
As a naturopath, it's even harder. And it was so much harder when it's like, I'm supposed to look healthy. And it wasn't that I wasn't looking healthy, I was just overweight and I couldn't work out how to lose it. But once I worked out what was going on and understood what was going on and how the hormones were impacting me and how I could solve the problem, because I do genetic-based personalized health now, and understanding the way my body works, understanding my genes, understanding all of that, it became easy because I knew exactly the foods to eat. I knew when to eat. I knew when to exercise. I did change a whole pile of things because in the past, I always used to think you've got to exercise first thing in the morning. And I always used to exercise first thing in the morning. I used to do boot camp and used to think I was hopeless because I couldn't keep up with everybody else. Now I know for me, I'm actually stronger in the afternoon. Now, some people are great in the morning. You're great in the morning, aren't you, Yvonne? I know you are.
Yeah.
Because I know you. I know I've got a fair idea what your health type is. But for me, I am better. I am stronger in the afternoon. Now, it doesn't mean I can't do things in the morning, but I'm stronger. And the first thing I did when I started to learn this stuff was change from morning exercise to afternoon exercise. And immediately I dropped 3 kilos.
Wow. 2 weeks. So I think that, you know, a lot of everything movement, you know, being aware of our body comes down to, you know, knowing our body, knowing when we don't feel right and when we do feel right. So when you came into our world, the Women's Fitness Adventures world, you were still in that extended lockdown. And I remember you saying to me that because you were still, you'd done the hiking and stuff, but it allowed you to, with our online active stuff, allowed you to still get out and hike and be connected, but not feel the pressure of keeping up or something to that effect. So can you tell me a little bit more about this? Because every woman that comes into our world has this fear of not being able to keep up, which is only in our own head. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Okay, so I used to, before all the world went crazy, I used to walk with a hiking group down here in Sydney. Now, because I've had one hip operation and the other hip's still not the best because I had to learn to reuse it, I'm not always as fast as other people. And so I always used to kind of, when I hike with them, I was quite often at the back. And there were times, when, you know, like I wouldn't talk to anyone because I was not so far behind, but everybody else would be chatting and I'd be at the back. And then I kind of start talking to someone because someone dropped back and talked to me. So when you talk, you slow down a little bit. Then I would get sent to the front so that basically to push me along. So they go, well, you go. I used to get told to go to the front because that would actually push me along. But the problem is when I started to get faster, then I'm more likely to trip and fall. And that used to concern me. So when I started walking with you guys, I can walk at my own pace. And sometimes, depending on the terrain, sometimes I can walk really fast. Other times, you know, depending on what's going on with my body, I slow down a little bit. And when I'm training, like on the weekend, I went out and because I'm training for the June walk, I'm pushing myself to go, okay, so how can I push myself? How fast can I go? But I don't have to compete with anybody else. It's like there's no one else there going, you're at the front, we're kind of going to push you from behind, which is how I was feeling when I was with the other group. It's like, I'll put you at the front so we push you from behind. And whether or not that was their intent, I don't think that was their intent, but as soon as I've got someone behind me, I feel really, really uncomfortable and I either stop. Generally what I do is I stop and I let people go, but because they wanted me at the front, it meant I had to kind of go faster and faster and faster because I knew I had these fast people behind me, and that put so much pressure on me, and I didn't enjoy it.
So yeah, I get that.
Why,
yeah.
You know, that's why I'm online. Some days I can walk at my own pace and I'm still there. I still feel like that I've got people, I can still talk and I can listen, and I do a lot of listening. Don't always talk, but I listen, so I don't feel like I'm alone, but I'm walking at my own pace and I'm watching what's going on. And with the functional fitness, now I love that too, because what that's given me now is giving me...
it's my singing that you really love.
Oh yeah, totally, it's your singing. But it's because I'm still doing a bit of rehab work, and I've been working with a physio recently, but the functional fitness is really giving me my balance back, and I've really noticed that, particularly the sideways movements. So doing that, and once again, doing that online, because when I was working with the other hiking group and I was doing some one-on-one training, and we went back to doing the really big hero moves, and I realized that we don't need to do hero moves. It's the small moves that make a difference. It really doesn't matter if I can bicep curl 100 kilos, really doesn't matter. But be able to get my balance back if I trip going sideways, that does matter. And a couple of times on the weekend, because when I walked, there was a few rocks, and a couple of times I went to slip, but I automatically pulled myself back up again. And I do that without using the poles now. So that's telling me that the functional fitness is actually working, because I can actually pull myself back and I don't fall. And falling, I've got a big fear of falling, and because I've had a couple of really big falls, but now I'm so much more confident. I still use sticks, but the reason why I use sticks is just to take the weight off my hips and my knees. I did try without sticks for a while, but it's so much easier with a distance when I have the sticks.
So we just got a couple of comments here before we finish up, Angela. So Brodwin says, Brodwin lives in Launceston. She was just thinking last night about how good it is having the group online with nobody watching you exercise and not having to keep up. And that thing about having to keep up and I'll be last and I'll be slow and I'll be blah, blah, blah is in our own heads, but it's real. I mean, there's nothing I can say or do. I can say everything. It doesn't help you because it only matters to you, how you feel about that. So, Brod, thank you for sharing that. And Mandy says, so true, diet and exercise work so differently for everyone. And I think that comes down to we get to know and understand our body.
Yes.
On the balance, balance gives us confidence and balance gives us freedom. So when we have those freedoms, we can live a richer, fuller life.
Okay, what did you think of that story? Look, if it inspired at least one woman to make a change, to think about what they could be doing to keep that mobility and to keep them moving as they age, then I don't mind sharing my story at all. As I said right at the beginning, I'd share with you how you can find out a little bit more about women's fitness adventures. I was speaking with Yvonne Shepherd, who runs Women's Fitness Adventures. I'm a member. And if you want to learn more, just go to Women's fitnessadventures.com.au, and you can become a member. And as part of the membership, and Yvonne did mention some of it as we went through the chat we were having, that there's online classes, which I do. I do functional fitness every week. I do a cardio class every week. Then we do a walk and talk where everyone basically is connected by phone on a Zoom call, and we just go and walk out in our local area, whatever speed you want, and you just have a chat to everybody else that's on the line, or you might just listen. And look, some weekends, it just depends on what's going on. For some women, they don't even go out. They're actually at home and they sit in and they just have a chat with us, because sometimes the weather means that they can't get out. But I love Women's Fitness Adventures, or WFA as we call it, because not only do they do that and train you and prepare you to be doing multi-day hikes, they also run lots of great hikes. Next year in July, I am going to Iceland. Really looking forward to that. 12 days walking through Iceland. Apparently it's pretty challenging terrain, so I'm in training for that right now. But they have lots of different hikes here in Australia and other places around the world. So if hiking is something that you're interested in and you're not sure, you want other women to do it with, or you just don't know where to get started, I highly recommend WFA. It is very affordable, a great community of women, are very supportive. And depending on where you live, we do actually have some local catch-ups where women who live in the same area all travel and they go out on day hikes. And if you live in Brisbane in Queensland, there's quite often some day hikes, because that's where Yvonne is based. So she runs day hikes out of different areas in Brisbane as well. But let me know what you thought of this discussion. Was there anything that, in me sharing my story, that helped you? If you're listening on an iPhone, please pop into Apple Podcast and leave me a rating and review, so that other women can find the podcast and learn more about the work that we're doing and the conversations we're having. Or if you're not already a member of the Menopause Conversations Facebook group, why not pop over there and let me know what you think of this conversation. What did you learn about me which you didn't know about me? But was it helpful? Was that information, me just sharing my story, does that actually help you? So come over to the Facebook group and let me know. So that's it from me, and I'll be back next week with another episode of Menopause Conversations podcast. Bye for now.